Fraud, espionage, corruption. It sounds like I'm describing a crime novel, but I'm not. I'm describing the book, All the President's Money, investigating the secret foreign schemes that made the Biden family rich, by Congressman James Comer. He is the chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability that advocates for reducing waste, fraud, and abuse in government. His book takes us through his investigation into the Biden crime family and how Joe Biden, making less than $200,000 a year for most of his life, was able to buy 2 multi-million-dollar mansions. We get all the dirty details on his family and their associates' alleged questionable financial dealings. Chairman Comer gives us the play-by-play of his examination and the rabbit hole it took him down. He shows us just how embedded the Biden family is with foreign entities like the Chinese Communist Party, Ukrainian oligarchs, and others around the world, and how the mainstream media helped cover it all up. The corruption and hypocrisy on the part of Joe Biden and his family is on the level of perverse. The nonchalance of selling out the American people for the furtherance of their own bank accounts will leave you at a loss for words. It can only be chalked up to evil playing out in the material realm. The ability for these people to look themselves in the mirror is beyond comprehension, though I guess a demon could. With me now is the author of All the President's Money, Chairman Comer. Thank you so much for joining us and shining a light on this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, the Biden family is accused of fraud, tax evasion, and selling influence. Your book goes into the details of your investigation into these activities. And I was blown away by how deep you say the corruption goes. And it seems like by now, most people are kind of used to hearing about issues like this. We've kind of become numb to it. So why should the American people care if our leaders are selling their influence to foreign entities? How does it affect our everyday life?
Well, it affects us whether you work in a factory, whether you purchase goods at Walmart, whether you own a small business, because China is our biggest adversary. And what China does is they try to go in to countries, and they have what's called a Belt and Road Initiative, where they go into countries and they try to take over. They try to become the economic superpower. And what they do is they prey on relatives of foreign leaders that they can get, that they can pretty much buy off. And that's what they did in this situation with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. The Bidens never, while Joe Biden was president, he never did anything to stand up to China, ever. Not one thing. China steals our intellectual properties. China steals our patents. China puts American workers out of business because they produce goods with slave labor and stealing our patents and do it cheaper in their own country. So we can't have countries coming in and buying off our leaders. And that's what happened. And I detail it in All the President's Money. So the other part that should concern every American is our weaponized judiciary. We saw it go after Donald Trump to where he was drug in court while he was running for president, while he was the front runner for president. He was having to sit in courts in Georgia and New York and everywhere else. What we found was the federal government knew the Bidens were on the take. They knew their family was on the take. They knew their family weren't paying their taxes, but they didn't do anything about it. They covered it up. So I think the average American should be concerned that we had a president that was on the take and that we had a government that was a part of the cover-up. Hopefully, with a new administration and with people like Kash Patel coming in, the FBI, and Pam Bondi coming in the Department of Justice, we're going to get rid of those deep state actors that were involved in the cover-up.
I sure hope so. And I'm definitely concerned about those things. As an everyday American, it feels like there's nothing that we can really do to hold the Bidens or others like them responsible. what they have done, especially now that Biden has pardoned his whole family. What's your take on these last-minute pardons that Biden gave out? Is there legal ground for this? Because I didn't even know you could be pardoned if you hadn't been charged with anything. And is there anything that President Trump can do?
Our founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves if they knew that a president, in his last act of his presidency, preemptively pardoned his entire family. Now, a lot of people were surprised to see that the spouses were pardoned. They knew he would pardon Hunter. Everybody knew he would pardon Jim Biden. They thought he might pardon Frank Biden. But his sister and the spouses of his siblings, people were shocked by that. The only place you're going to see those spouses' names is in my book, All the President's Money, because we found in our investigation that 10 different Biden family members received incremental payments from this dirty money that was coming from China and Russia and Ukraine and Romania that had been laundered down through these shell companies and ended up in the Biden family members' bank accounts in incremental payments. So the payments weren't subject to taxes because of the way they created this financial scheme. The Biden family owes taxes. They've broken the Foreign Agents Registration Act because the money they got were from foreign entities. They didn't disclose any of this. These entities were needing stuff from our government. You've got obviously tax evasion, money laundering. There are so many serious financial crimes that anyone whose last name isn't Biden or receives a pardon from the Biden would be in prison for. So I think the very last act Joe Biden did was an admission of guilt that this is, in fact, the Biden crime family.
I absolutely agree with that. One thing that I wanted to bring up from your book is the speech that Joe Biden gave in Romania, where he said that corruption is just another form of tyranny. Now, this tells me that Joe Biden is very aware that his actions are tyrannical, which is downright evil. Are they that sadistic? Do they hate the little guy that much that they're willing to be a tyrant to their own people?
Yes. I mean, this is a family that clearly the rules don't apply to themselves. Taxes are only for the little people. The rules only apply to the little people, not the elite. And if you try to step in their way, like Donald Trump, you're going to face their fury. And with the speech in Romania, what I said in the book, in all the research I did on Joe Biden, he gave 2 speeches in foreign countries while he was vice president about corruption. Mm-hmm. He gave a speech in Romania and he gave a speech in Ukraine. Days after he left Air Force 2, after giving those speeches about corruption, his corrupt son started receiving millions of dollars in payments that were laundered through a series of shell companies. Now, both people in Ukraine and Romania that sent Joe Biden's son these millions of dollars were under investigation in their respective countries, in Romania and in Ukraine, for fraud. And what they were needing was, Joe Biden's help to get their government off their back. And he did that in Ukraine. Remember, he fired the prosecutor that was investigating the Burisma Energy Company that Hunter was getting, $4.5 million for being on the board. They fired that prosecutor because he was about to rein him in. Other countries had seized their assets. So Joe Biden successfully did what he was paid to do in Ukraine. But then you take Romania, and they just, it appears the Bidens just took their money, and the guy, Gabriel Popovich, I can't pronounce his last name, he ends up in prison for fraud, even though he paid the Bidens $1 million. They took $1 million and ran. So, everybody, and my book details this, everybody that sent the Bidens money were bad people from bad countries that were needing help from Joe Biden. And this was always about Joe Biden, even though, the media tried to say it's the Hunter Biden investigation. This was the Joe Biden investigation. And it just so happened that Hunter and Jim Biden and the other family members, they were all key players in the schemes. But at the top of the organizational chart in the Biden crime family is Joe Biden.
Yep, that is true. You also bring up the 150 suspicious activity reports filed on transactions related to the entities that were connected to the Bidens. Now, if any of us got just one SAR filed on one of our transactions, I'm sure we would be investigated and probably experience a financial equivalent of a full body cavity search. So why do you think it's different for the Bidens? Are they the new Clintons?
They are. and I think the Bidens learned a lot from the Clintons, from the way the Clintons set up the Clinton Foundation. If you look at the way the Bidens were setting up their influence peddling scheme, it was a mini version of the Clinton Foundation. So when they saw how Hillary and Bill got away with a lot of stuff, I think that inspired Joe. I really do. But at the end of the day, these suspicious activity reports, this was something that I understood because I had been a director of a bank for over a decade, and my family was involved in banking. I knew that nobody ever gets a suspicious activity report, and if you do, you get one, and that's it. We knew 150, but when we got in there, we found there were 20 more. There were 170 that Jim and Hunter Biden got. Then they were subject of another 50 suspicious activity reports that were filed on other people that they were involved in a transaction. So altogether, there were 225 suspicious activity reports with the Biden's name on it. I would say the previous Guinness Book of World Records on suspicious activity reports would have probably been 10 or 12. And this family had over 200. So no bank wants to file a suspicious activity report on a prominent customer because that's an invitation for the bank examiners to come in. And when the bank examiners come in, they have to shut the door, they have to pull people in, they have to get their lawyers in there, and it costs money, it takes time, it's a pain in the behind to deal with these bank examiners. So they knew when they were filing these suspicious activity reports that it was going to be a pain with the compliance costs and all this other stuff, but they did it because they were pretty certain that financial crimes were being committed. And what we found were there were 6 different banks that filed these bank violations, these suspicious activity reports against the Bidens. And these are big banks. These were Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Cathay Bank, the biggest banks in the world. And they were saying things like money laundering, bribery, shell companies, tax evasion. This is the biggest financial crime that I've ever been a part of in all my years of banking. So these were very serious, and that alone should have been a red flag to the media as to how corrupt this Biden family was.
Yes, it really is mind-blowing. So why do you think the Bidens and people like them do this? Obviously, money is the biggest factor, but some of these payments that you mentioned are as little as $50,000. Now, that is a lot of money, but is it sell out your country money? When the payments are in the tens of thousands of dollars, do you think it's even about the money anymore, or is it just about the power? They do it because they can.
Well, I think they do it because they can, but I do think it's about the money. And a lot of times the payments would be in the $1 million range, but then they would launder it through companies, and then it would come down in incremental payments. So there may be a payment as low as $3,500. There may be a payment of $150,000. But by the time it got in the personal accounts of the 10 different Biden family members, it was anywhere from $200,000, which is one payment Joe Biden got, down to like $1,300, which is something one of the grandchildren got. But this is a very sophisticated financial scheme they use. Bankers call it money laundering. If you were a U.S. attorney, you could make a good case for RICO, which is organized crime, because that's what this family was. This was organized. The media, even the conservative media, tried to make Hunter Biden out to be just this drug head, and obviously he was addicted to drugs, and we see the pictures on the laptop. But most of these transactions occurred before he got really, really addicted to drugs. And I've said this on Sean Hannity's show. Hunter Biden's smarter than we conservatives gave him credit for. This is a very sophisticated financial scheme. Even the IRS whistleblowers, whose whole career has been around solving these sophisticated financial schemes, said that this was professional. And I write in my book, All the President's Money, that the first job Hunter Biden had out of college was he was a bank fraud examiner, a bank fraud examiner for a big credit card company in Delaware. So I believe he learned how to defraud from being a bank fraud examiner. And you know, this was a complicated scheme. They wanted those payments to be small. So if they got caught with one, well, it's just $1,500, it was just $20,000, whatever. But at the end of the day, you know, we're talking about $35 million here. So it was real money.
Yes, that's definitely true. You also bring up in the book your belief that the Bidens feel that they're basically a royal family and that they shouldn't have to pay taxes, only us peasants should. So
Sure.
Knowing that, what is the most important thing that you want the reader to take away from this book, and where's the best place for viewers to get it?
Well, I want people to know what I was involved in the investigation. A lot of people say, well, Comer, why didn't you go in and arrest Joe Biden? Well, you know, a police officer can't put someone, you know, sentence someone to jail. You know, a police officer does the investigation. They have to get permission from a judge to get a warrant to arrest them. And then the judge and a jury determines whether they go to jail. We had all sorts of obstacles in this investigation. The book goes into it. We dealt with a lying, dishonest media. We dealt with one of the most expensive criminal legal teams ever assembled since the O.J. Simpson trial. We dealt with the White House, with the Department of Justice, with a deep state bureaucracy in the FBI that attacked me personally, attacked members of the committee. They colluded with the media. The book goes into detail of who the people were that sent them the money, what we did about it, what we reported versus what the media reported, and it's just basically a forensic accounting of everything they did. But I think the one thing that got lost in translation through the whole investigation, and Tony Bobulinski, who was one of the original partners in the China deal, he pulled out of the China deal because he realized there was no China energy company. And that's what the media says. Well, Hunter got money from a Chinese energy company. There was no Chinese energy company. According to Tony Bobulinski, this was the government funneling money through an entity just to bribe the Bidens. And that was an $8 million bribe. That was a lot of money. And that all happened when Hunter sent the message that said his dad sitting here beside him when he was trying to shake down that Chinese person involved with the Chinese Communist Party. So the book goes into detail, and a lot of questions that people ask me on the street about the investigation are answered in the book. I'm proud of the book. It's on the New York Times bestsellers list. I think that it's a good book, and it's a good reference for the Trump administration as to how to prevent this from happening in the future.
Oh, okay. So I definitely encourage every American to read this. I feel it's our duty as citizens to educate ourselves about what our leaders are really up to, especially with this kind of thing. Before you go, what's next for you after these pardons the big guy gave out? Is there a part 2 to this book?
I would sure hope so. You know, the ball's in Pam Bondi's court. She has the investigation. If she wants to prosecute, she can. I don't think these preemptive pardons would hold up in court. I mean, they owe millions of dollars in taxes. The investigation that was going to get so many of the family members and bring in Joe Biden, that's when they were told to stand down, according to the IRS whistleblowers. They were ready to bring Joe Biden in to question him, and the Department of Justice told them, no, stand down. And ironically, that was during the Trump administration, but it was, you know, deep state career employees in the Department of Justice. Leslie Wolf was their name, to be specific. So I want to see justice served. I know from talking to Kash Patel that a lot of these people that were involved in the cover-up in the government, I think they're going to be held accountable. We've already seen the 51 intelligence officials who said that the laptop was Russian disinformation. They lost their security clearance for lying to the American people. That was the first step of accountability. I think there's going to be many more. I'm willing to work with Pam Bondi. And again, the book tells about all of it. People can buy it on Amazon or buy it at Barnes & Noble, but it's a very thorough explanation from top to bottom of everything that went on in the investigation, everything the Bidens did.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and helping us all understand the truth behind what really happened with the Biden crime family.
My pleasure. Thank you.